In the UK, with its relatively little sunshine, solar power is now generating more electricity than coal does. Standing behind me is Didcot Power Station in Oxfordshire. It's just one of many coal power stations all over Europe that are being decommissioned and demolished every year. But for emerging economies with less strict carbon policies, coal is still proving a highly attractive energy source. The issue is, with its sizable health and environmental risks, can governments really justify building new ones? For many Western tourists, the stereotype of Kenya is one of expansive savannas and breathtaking wildlife. But Nairobi is the capital to what is now the biggest and most advanced economy in East and Central Africa. To drive development, Kenya needs infrastructure and it needs power. These are coming in the form of two multi-billion-pound projects that the government is building in Lamu County on Kenya's northeast coast. The biggest deep-sea port in sub-Saharan Africa is being built with vast amounts of material shipped from many miles around. A few miles to the north will be the largely Chinese-financed and Chinese-constructed coal power plant. Travel by road to Lamu Island still carries the risk of kidnap by Al-Shabaab militants coming over the Somali border. A flight from Nairobi, however, gives a good perspective of the highly fragile ecological environment in which these projects will be built. This part of the coast is a recognised biodiversity hotspot, with delicately balanced ecosystems and a large network of coral reefs. Lamu is also of great cultural significance, being the oldest and best preserved Swahili settlement in East Africa. Access is only possible by boat, and once ashore, one of the first people I meet is Raya Famau. She's head of the local women's community group. I was keen to ask her if she supports the government's plan for the area.
Actually, I don't, because they're not very good projects. Lamu is a World Heritage Site. There are things we've been preserving for almost 100 years, and these major projects which are coming up are going to destroy what we've been preserving, especially the coal power plant project, because we know the effects of coal. We've witnessed what is happening in other countries, and we as Lamu people, we don't support that project because it's not environmental friendly project.
So aside from being one of the worst polluters in terms of climate change, what are the other environmental impacts that Raya talks of? Coal power has long been associated with pollution of watercourses. Contamination of the drinking water supply is a very serious concern in what is already an extremely water-stressed area. Other health concerns include respiratory illnesses. Coal power stations have open-air ash pits, and locals are concerned about breathing in toxins due to the strong monsoon winds that could blow ash over the town from December to April every year. In total, 24,000 people live on Lamu, and of the households that exist here, it's fishing that supports an estimated 75% of them, and it's mostly carried out by employing traditional methods in non-motorised dhow boats. Fishermen have already started to struggle due to the dredging of the channel to build the new megaport. With dredging comes the destruction of coral reef, the main breeding ground for fish. Warmer effluent into the sea from the coal power plant could well compound this problem further. Despite having these concerns, it doesn't mean that people in Lamu are opposed to development altogether. It just means that they want it to happen in a more well thought out way. Raya explains further.
Like in Lamu, for the past 50 years down the line, since independence, we don't have tarmac road. So we believe if they build the tarmac road, it's going to open Lamu. It will bring investment, it will bring power, it will bring water, business. So if they do that project, we will support, because road come with many amenities, but not power plant.
With only 3 cars here, the best way to get around is to use one of the 6,000 donkeys on the island. I was off to find people who were in full support of the infrastructure projects, and it wasn't long before I came across a man who was eager to see them built.
Sababu ya kuunga kitambo, yani kutoka tulipokuwa tuna mashine hapa tulikuwa tukisumbuka. Sasa hivi hapa tumepata mashine hizi, lakini pia ukija huo sitakuwa ni bora kwetu, utasaidia kuwa na hizo umeme hapa. Okay.
Sawa. Una maoni mengine pengine mbali ya hayo kwa nini waunga mradi?
Kwa sababu kama wale waliokuwa na mashamba kule tayari ukija huo mradi tayari si watakuwa wamelipwa kitu, nao watu ambao maskini watafaidika.
It's this issue of compensation that's contentious here. I spoke to Omar and Waleed at the community organisation called Save Lamu. They're claiming that many people believe they will be compensated, when in reality it's not nearly as clear-cut as that. The group also claims the community has not been properly consulted, and that local people have been deliberately excluded. Despite such serious concerns, there remains a fair amount of support on Lamu for the projects. There are, though, many people just wanting to see Kenya move into the 21st century with its power generation. I met a man called Outweigh Abzain. He works in the natural gas industry, but is also a founding member of the Environment Trust of Kenya, a registered NGO based in Mombasa. I asked him if he thought there were any alternatives.
Oh, certainly. I mean, we are in a world where people are moving to solar. We're in a world where people are moving to wind. Lamu being where it is located, you can even use the ocean. You can use in wave energy. I'm sure you've heard of the wave energy. We have big waves that can generate power. I work for an oil and gas company where we want to use gas to produce electricity. So I don't know what's the hurry for that we have to use coal.
Part of the hurry could be due to how these projects are being financed. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China is funding 60% of the coal plant, and a Chinese construction firm has been awarded the contract. This will involve 40,000 Chinese workers that will be brought across to Lamu to build it. With China itself moving away from coal, many state-owned coal construction companies have seen their business dry up. One solution is to look abroad and to offer new low-budget coal plants to African governments, even if it isn't always the energy source that they want. Given Outweigh echoing concerns about the impacts of the projects and the lack of benefit sharing for the local community, I asked him just which Kenyans were in favour of the plan.
Well, I fear even telling you because these are very powerful people in the government and in the business sector here in Kenya. So they're pushing it under the throat of the Lamu community. That's what I would tell you. They are pushing it under the throat. Whether you like it or not, you're going to get it. That's the sad part of it.
With my time on Lamu drawing to an end, I reflected on how there was both positive and negative feeling here towards the coal plant. It's hard, though, to dismiss the environmental and social concerns that many local people do have, and how it puts into jeopardy Kenya's pledge to reduce carbon emissions 30% by 2030. A further concern is that the coal to be burnt here doesn't even come from Kenya. It'll have to be shipped here from as far away as South Africa, and that could exacerbate the country's already sizable trade deficit. Despite this, the country does need energy sources to come online soon if it's to continue its development. Coal power is still relatively cheap here, and the power station, when built, is predicted to provide an impressive 20% of the country's energy capacity. That said, critics would argue that coal power is falsely considered to be cheap because the unit price of electricity fails to factor in the economic cost of the pollution that coal generates. Further still, there's also a certain irony to using coal. Part of the reason for building the coal plant is to help plug the gaps in the electricity supply caused by the drying up of Kenya's hydropower during times of drought, something that's been attributed to climate change. Lastly, with many Kenyans proud and ambitious to show the world that they will not copy the fossil fuel path that Western countries did 50 years ago, the yet-to-be-built Lamu Coal Power Plant is looking increasingly like a source of national anguish rather than national pride. Lawrence De Silva, Lamu, Kenya.